basin, all in the district that I represent. So we have a lot of people that are still dealing with and will be dealing with the impacts of that, obviously, for many years to come. I want to say that in addition to the official groups, there were, as we all know, there were amazing volunteer groups that were so helpful. On the first night I was in the Black Point Fire Hall, it was opened up very quickly as a comfort center by volunteers. The community was amazing. As some of you know, all of the businesses were coming in, not only bringing food, but offering places for people to stay. The inns around Hubbard's all offered free accommodation for those who needed it for the first week or so. The volunteers at the Bill Estabrook Center that kept that going for quite a while was very important. And I was in daily contact, as Lena was, with the Federal Minister of Emergency Preparedness, Bill Blair. I spoke to him a couple of times a day, and it was a great effort on behalf of, I think, all levels of government to try and cope with what was an unprecedented thing. I said in some interviews at the time, there was no rehearsal for having this massive suburban fire affecting all of you in Halifax, and having the largest fire in the history of the province in Shelburne County happening at the same time. There was no practice or manual that had been done. So all of the agencies that worked together to get things as best we could under control, so that it was safe for people to go home and now be dealing with the future of the communities, is greatly appreciated. There's a lot more work to do, and we thank all of you for coming out tonight. And like Lena, we're here to listen and hear what your issues are. Obviously, there are concerns around access in and out. I have met with some firefighting companies out west that produce water bombers. There's lots of work ongoing as unfortunate learnings from this situation.
Yeah. And as Rick said, there's nothing that the federal government was not prepared to do and step up to help. And we are here for the long term. So good luck tonight. We are here to listen, get feedback, get input, and see what we can do to lessen these catastrophes from happening again in our own backyards. And just, I don't want to get emotional, but I was in Ottawa Sunday late afternoon. The first text I received was from my children who were scared to death. So it really did affect many, many people, certainly in the first few days, but I know a lot of you that are here are still very much affected, and we are here to give whatever support we can give. So thank you everyone for coming out.
I just forgot one other. The White Sails Bakery was amazing. Yeah. They provided so much food for everybody, all volunteers. I don't know if there's anyone here from the White Sails, but thank you.
That's great, eh? When they're on the election trail, they're kind of on different sides. When they come together and represent us, they come together and work together for our benefit. So let's keep that tradition alive. I'm going to ask Ben Jessam and Danielle Barkhouse to come up together as well.
Speak first, Ben? You'll have to excuse me. I was only asked on my way in here, so I was planning on standing in the corner and listening and ruining the microphone. It's karaoke. Well, I just want to say I was here to listen, but I'm just so proud of this community and all the community members and surrounding members who really just stepped up to the plate and helped, and how everybody just kept their head straight and really took care of themselves, their families, and their community members. And I'm so proud of the people on this wall. And I know White Sails was mentioned by our MP, but I'd also like to mention the St. Margaret's Bay Legion, who stepped up and is still stepping up, and it's definitely appreciated. Yeah. And this is, I understand, believe it or not, to a certain extent, what you guys are going through. It'll be 4 years this August that my kids and I jumped out of our burning house at 2 o'clock in the morning.
I didn't hear too much of a speech, but I only had a few. And what our community and all levels of government We need to work together and move forward collaboratively. We need to have candid and respectful conversations that lead to demonstrable progress. I accept the privilege of representing you all in the community that raised me. Clearly, I take it very personally.
Usually I'm the crier.
Yeah. So please expect an honest effort from me and approach me with your ideas and concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Danielle. Before we get into the next section, I just want to acknowledge, but she's not allowed to speak. Kathy O'Toole, the CAO of HRM, is over there, so go talk to her. So as I indicated, is that there's kind of two parts to this. The first part is bringing together those folks who have provided emergency and operation leadership through this catastrophe from the province, Nova Scotia Power, and HRM. So we're going to ask them individually to come up and briefly present their perspective from the past, the perspective of current perspective, and perhaps what we can expect from the future. And I'm going to start that by asking Bill Moore of HRM's Emergency Management Office of the newly formed Community Safety Division, Community Safety Office. Bill.
Good evening, all. As mentioned, I'm Bill Moore. I'm the Executive Director of Community Safety. It's a newly formed business unit that's just opened up basically in March of this year. It comprises emergency management, homelessness and housing file, public safety, compliance bylaw, and street navigator programs. So emergency management reports up through me. I was involved in part of the response in the operations center. I can move it up. That's fine. Just a little bit. So just briefly, let me start off with this. As mentioned, this was unprecedented, but that doesn't mean that we couldn't do some things better. So I had a number of conversations, maybe with some of you in the room. I met with over 60 people in person who lost their homes. I listened, I continue to listen, and I can assure you that we are continuing our work now with the hub and the recovery program that's there. We've also undertaken an after-action report, and we're soliciting feedback not only internally, but with other levels of government. We're working with the provincial government as well to look at the responses, the processes, what worked, what didn't work well, and then we'll be building out a report to look on how we build those into the program if this ever happens again. The issue of egress is one of the items that the CAO has asked me to look into. So we have a working group internally. As mentioned, Council on June 6th passed a motion looking at our directing staff through the CAO to look at Westwood Hills in relation to their egress. But we are working to continue on a broader approach to egress. At this point, our direction from Council is to come back with that report, but I suspect it'll be a much more inclusive report looking at other areas that maybe need to be brought into the discussion. The after-action report, when complete, will be going to Council and will be made public, so you will be able to see what we found in those areas. I would suggest if anybody has comments or concerns, they can certainly share those with us through the wildfiresupport.ca, at halifax.ca site. I think many of you already have been engaged with information back and forth on that. If you do have questions or you do have concerns, the hub is here. It is staffed. If you go to halifax.ca, there's a schedule as to who is going to be there when they're there. As mentioned earlier, the representatives of the Red Cross, United Way, mental health supports, and as well as staff from HRM. I'll be around for the entire meeting. That's basically my role. I'm here. Feel free to come up and talk to me if you like, and I'll be available for questions at some point. But in the interest of time, I'll leave it at that. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. I'm now going to ask Deputy Chief Peter Andrews of Halifax Fire Emergency to come up.
Wow, thank you very much. An old guy like me starts to get verklempt here, so no, sincerely, folks, thank you for the outpouring of support that occurred during this significant fire. You cannot underestimate the impact that the citizens honking their horns as they went by the fire stations, dropping off water to the scene and food and snacks. It was so greatly appreciated. And we are so proud of our firefighters, both our career and volunteer firefighters. And I'm going to circle back there because you threw me off. You threw me off at the beginning with the outpouring of support. I just forgot to introduce my colleague, who was probably the face of the communications at the fire, Deputy Chief Dave Meldrum as well. As I said, we could not be prouder of our firefighters, both career and volunteer. As you know, our firefighters, our volunteer firefighters in particular, are members of this community here. And in fact, we had 3 of our firefighters whose homes burned down. We had one of our fire dispatchers that was taking calls during the fire who found out at work that her home had burnt down. We also had members of our emergency fleet division who found that their house burned down, that were working overtime to get all our fire trucks able to respond to that emergency. So astounding, and impact of this fire, resonated through our organization as well. We had volunteer firefighters, as you know, 16,000 people were evacuated, including many of our volunteer firefighters here in the community. And in fact, they were staying over at our stations, living in, so they could respond to the next fire or the next call or the next emergency. So. We ramped up our operations about an additional 100 firefighters each and every day from the time of the fire through to the rain that came on Friday. We've already highlighted some of our partners there. We may have been the pointy stick of that, or the spear for that event, but we could not have done it to sustain and support without the many, many other support agencies that assisted us in being successful. So we thank them for sure. Brush firefighting is dirty, hot, and physical work, and our folks did that. We are so proud of our, we figure about, our organization is about 500 career and 500 volunteer, and we figure about 700 of them there at some point in time. Several of them many times were at that emergency throughout the week. Our mission is to save lives, protect property, and to protect the environment. And we are so happy that we were able to come out of this catastrophe with no deaths or no serious injuries. We are so thankful for that. However, we do acknowledge, the folks that have been devastated by this fire and the loss of property to more than 150 citizens here. I can't imagine to come home to no home. So that's unbelievable. To say that this fire was fast-moving is an understatement. We actually had our first crew was actually doing a community event, visiting a public event, and actually responded immediately from that to the fire and got there very quickly. But I looked at the report this morning, and the initial call to 911, when the call came in, was, we have a fire in the woods that is spreading quickly. So that fire was ahead of us long before we got there. And despite our best efforts, we very quickly mobilized many, many firefighters. It went from 20 to 40 to 60. We had about 100 folks there by midnight on Sunday night. But despite that, that fire continued to burn out of control for several days. And in fact, the only way that was able to be contained or partially contained was through the Department of Natural Resources bringing in the fire bombers to attack that fire. As you know, that provincial alert was integral in notifying folks, and I think we all jump and have a little bit of horror every time that happens because it was one other community, one other area, one other evacuation that was happening. So, and I think that will always be with us. We also had about 5 rescues that night for folks that could not get out of the evacuation area on their own, as well as a seniors home that wasn't able to be evacuated. And our folks had to actually be in the line of that fire to protect in place, we call it, to make sure that those seniors would be protected. We also had to protect the water supply at the pump house there in Pockwalk, which had we lost that pump house, we would have not only lost drinking water, but also the water for firefighting to which we were using and we were reliant on. Over the next couple of days, order slowly began to come to chaos, however, we didn't know that we were yet to have another worst day to come, and Thursday was that day for us. Come Thursday, stretched after 4 or 5 days of firefighting, we had the hottest day of the year. I think it still is to date, the Thursday, with 100 folks on duty, 100 folks at the fire. We subsequently had another major fire that popped up on the St. Margaret's Bay Road, Prospect Road, another one in Tantallon, and at the same time, the Wag-Waltic Club caught on fire in a very deep-seated defensive fire. I can tell you that in my 31 years of experience, I ordered things that I've never seen in my career. One, we deployed our 25 recruits that were in training to go to the fire to assist. They were very close to graduation, so they were ready, but that had never happened before. We placed on call and we called out for any firefighter in our municipality that could respond. That had never happened in recent history. And we had D&D firefighters, we had mutual aid partners living and operating out of our fire stations because we were spread so thin, they were there to help support for the next call within our communities. So a huge effort and a huge combined effort by many organizations. And I think finally on Friday, the collective prayers of everybody in this community and from Yarmouth to Sydney was answered as the rain began. And if it was not for that rain, we'd probably still be at work. But that really helped us bring that fire, to contain it, to bring it under control, and to ultimately see it fully extinguished. Certainly, the scale of this event is unprecedented for us. We are still in the midst of a post-incident review to see what went well, what can be improved, and that will continue. Obviously, one of the key things that we expedited very quickly is the Fire Smart program, which is a program to help citizens improve the fire safety of their homes from wildfire. And we actually have the Department of Natural Resources here tonight with some information on how you can do things to your own properties, and as well some information coming soon about what our organization will be doing to help get out and do assessments for our citizens. Certainly this fire, the worst event that we have seen in recent history for our fire service, but also a moment of pride for our city, and a moment of pride for our communities. Just how we pulled together, that logo, Nova Scotia Strong, is so true. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is truly a pleasure to be here. We will be around to answer some questions later on. Thank you for your resiliency, and thank you for being here tonight.
Peter referred to the efforts of the Department of Natural Resources, and I'm going to ask Scott Tingley and Cara McCurdy from the Department of Natural Resources and Renewables to come up.
We need to lower this, do we? No, I'm good. Good evening, everybody. I think it was me that ordered the rain, by the way. A little too hard, perhaps. But anyway, I just wanted to first start off by saying how sorry I am for your losses. we're all still living the nightmare, including the department. We weren't just dealing with one fire. We were dealing with multiple fires, and for us to have 2 large fires in the province with structure loss was very significant. Sorry, my name is Kara McCurdy. I should start there, hey? I'm the Wildfire Prevention Officer for the Department of Natural Resources and Renewables, although today I don't feel like I'm doing a great job, but and this is my operations manager from our department, Scott Tingley. You know, our role in the fires starts with the 911 call from the local dispatch centers. And we in turn will dispatch the district offices that are out there and get the appropriate folks on the roll to get to the fires. We monitor situations, we help with resources, we ask for more resources if we need it, if our province is short on resources. But we also do the weather restrictions and the burn maps that everybody hates following every day. But my role in general in the past 10 years has been wildfire mitigation. And I never thought in my career that a community that I had assessed would ever catch fire, and including some of the homes that I individually assessed would burn to the ground. The sad part is with wildfire is that it doesn't follow a direct path. It picks and chooses what it's going to burn based on the structure condition and how close the forest is to it, how to access that home or that community, water supply, and a whole bunch of things. So Westwood Hills had reached out to me in 2016 for a wildfire risk assessment. And that's usually how most of them start, is your local association groups or friends of groups coming into or getting a hold of me and contacting us for a wildfire risk assessment. And then we kind of look at everything in whole, you know, all the homes in the community, what they're made out of, how close they are to the forest. We look at recreational use, water supply, access, egress. There's a lot of things that are considered. And I've been asked often, you know, whose responsibility is it? And it's really not one person or another, it's everybody's responsibility. It's agencies, it's governments, it's persons, it's everybody, businesses even. We're not going to be able to do this alone, so we need everybody's help in doing this. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that? No? Looking at the wildfire risk assessments, the process to complete, and I'm hoping that more communities will come online and ask for help and look at more homes and communities, is just contact your association group. You don't have to even be in a part of the association group. You can be just a resident and get a hold of us, myself. My card is on the table, and we'll come out and do the assessments. They are definitely free. And the home risk assessments in Halifax Regional, they have a website where you can go to sign up for them. There has been so much great work to date done in Halifax County. A lot of communities have done a lot of great work. Certainly, you know, there's a lot of things that didn't get finished because of COVID and certain things that had happened in the past 5 or 6 years. But yeah, certainly reach out and get help. We're here for you guys. Any questions that you have, please stop by the booth and ask us. Yeah, and we'll take it from there. I won't talk long. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Scott and Kara. Well, the control of things going on during that period of time must have been pretty extreme, and I want to invite Chief Superintendent Jeffrey Christie, Halifax Regional Canadian Mounted Police, to come up and talk to us.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. My name is Jeffrey Christie. I'm a Maritimer, grew up in the Maritimes. Have a father that was born in Barrington Passage and a daughter that was born in Sydney, Nova Scotia. We consider Nova Scotia our home. And recently we moved back here in December of 2022. There are a number of members of the RCMP family here tonight. Some of them are off duty to my left. Some of them are on duty at the back or to the right. And while it's a little bit of reverse onus, I would like to acknowledge the members who responded that evening. First and foremost, whether they were on duty or off duty, you saw RCMP officers responding in shorts and t-shirts, in jackets, standing by the side of the road. And like many of you, I arrived at the site around 6:25, and to see that staggering size of the fire and see that staggering risk and see so many first responders. And so I just want to acknowledge the members of the RCMP family that are here tonight for your selfless service, as many of you were in motels or living in campers and still showing up to work to keep people safe. So thank you. So if I may get into some quick remarks, let me just acknowledge that I'm on traditional Mi'kma'ki land. And I also want to acknowledge for our brothers and sisters and first responders that in the Canadian landscape, there's been 2 firefighters in British Columbia and in the Northwest Territories who have lost their lives. And earlier today, there was a helicopter pilot reported in Alberta, doing, again, very brave work. I'm sure we'll learn more about that. And so I ask you to think again tonight, as we talk through this evening, that we have many people traumatized and deeply impacted, but I ask that we hold each other up because we don't have a loss of life. We don't have a loss of life. And so as we go through, and the impact of trauma that we know digs deep into us, and the alerting system and so on and so forth can have significant impacts even days, weeks, years down the road. So my next part is to also acknowledge community leadership. Community leadership from my side, I'll make some more comments earlier. We have the CAO, we have Mr. Bill Moore, we have Councillor Pam Lovelace. Everybody that I observed within the spectrum of the emergency services, and particularly firefighters from Department of Natural Resources and the firefighters from the City of Halifax, everybody deployed and everybody worked together. And so I too want to acknowledge the firefighters and DNR to see people on the hottest day of the year covered in soot, dragging themselves back out of the bush. You know, that's just incredible memories of heroism, because people even then were trying to save property. So I too would like to acknowledge the firefighters and DNR and other folks. The last part, before I get into some remarks about the role of the RCMP during an emergency, is this really unique role that community leadership through the Emergency Operations Center in Halifax does, will do, and will continue to do. And you can imagine in the chaos of 16,000 homes and possible risks of more, people being led by the Chief Administration Officer, people being led by Director General Mr. Bill Moore, member of the Order of Merit of Police Services, the amazing almost 24/7 support that agency was being brought to bear. And for those of you who lost homes, my heart goes out to you. Those memories, those wedding rings, those family mementos, they're taken. But I know that the sensitivity and the empathy of that team in the Emergency Operations Center, to imagine how they would rally trauma-informed people and counselors and arrange bus tours and so on, they've really, from my chair, seen that happen real time, because I had a foot. I'll be candid, and this is not meant in any kind of a negative humor-wise, we don't actually know in policing much about firefighting. What we do know is things like traffic control, making sure that we keep people safe. Because during the event, if you imagine the event, there are a whole bunch of access issues, people coming and going, who might need medication, and so on and so forth. So that brings me to a point that I want to thank each of you. I tell you, for the demand and the impact and the frustration level, we had all of you and many others that aren't here tonight basically fled their homes sometimes with nothing on their back. And yet many of you wanted to go back in. And you had to face those difficult conversations where police or some other agency might be saying, sorry, you can't go in tonight. You know, I want to thank each of you, not just for the support of the people that brought food and the people that cheered the members up who were working 16 or 20-hour days, but we had fantastic compliance. We had fantastic support and patience. We saw when we opened up community neighborhoods, sometimes there could be 2-mile lines. And we also learned from that to make sure we didn't have 2-mile lines, maybe a little bit later on when we open the neighborhoods, because that can create a risk of car accidents and somebody getting hurt, right? So it's all about, for the RCMP, safety. Safety. What at any given time are the resources we need to bring to bear during an emergency to try and keep people safe? Recognizing we're not firefighters, we're not ambulance folks, we're not, you know, we try to help the SPCA rescue animals, but we're not trained sort of SPCA folks. And so we mobilized in a spectrum. We had at any given time probably an additional 40 staff either deployed in the field or helping. We had command posts set up here at the site. I was here earlier today, and for some of us that were here through those days, and the building had such a different feel today. There were kids playing hockey. There were parents walking through it. And what we saw during those days was hot weather and tired firefighters and emergency staff. And so that resiliency of a community coming back to life, the belief in each other, the belief that a community are the folks we care about in different homes, and you saw that during the evacuation, neighbors going to neighbors to make sure they were okay. We saw that when ground search and rescue volunteers, upwards of 100 people mobilized to leave their jobs and come help during that week. What a statement about community, and what a statement about resiliency. And then the leadership of someone like Councillor Pam Lovelace bringing us all together tonight. Councillor, good on you for demonstrating that. So the RCMP has that spectrum during emergency. We're deploying, we're helping, trying to keep people safe. And then on the side, we're always trying to ask ourselves around risk of criminality. And so during the event, and actually 3 weeks post-event, we had dedicated patrols supplemented by support from the municipality to try and have cars and talk to people and have, because a state of emergency, by its definition, legally has restrictions, to make sure we knew who was in the neighborhoods. Right? Now, we couldn't impede the firefighters if it's between 3 fire trucks fighting a fire. You know, we're not going down that road at that moment, but that's what we do, work together. And so every day, the RCMP, along with other first responders, would have a daily meeting, start the day talking about what are the fire risks, what are the police looking for, et cetera, and that would continue that rhythm through the days. The RCMP public safety component, really it was on the Friday at the last final Westwood neighborhood was being opened up. I can tell you that, you know, the RCMP were thrilled again to see everyone get back into that neighborhood safely. But for the following 3 weeks after that, we had extra patrols. And so if you were in one of the other neighborhoods, you might have seen the RCMP command post there for about 10 days, and an additional command post, right? So we continued for that 3 weeks afterwards, having staggered patrols. And another great agency that helped us at the beginning, at the end, was the Halifax Regional Police. I tell you, you might have been coming or going that first evening or afterwards, and you might have seen the Halifax Regional Police helping the RCMP. And that's what we do in policing, we help each other. So, where are we today? Some people have questions about are the RCMP investigating or not the fires. So the first part is we're not investigating the fires right now. That's being led by the Department of Natural Resources, who have highly trained folks in fire investigation. The RCMP has certainly been parallel through this whole time, as we have during the event, and they're aware, and through conversation between the fire chief of HRM, myself, Paul Shear, who's not here, from the Department of Natural Resources, that the support of the RCMP is there for anything that's required. But it is primarily led, and that's good. They have experts in this area, and they are leading the investigation into the fires. It's an active investigation, or it is an ongoing investigation. So really, myself and others can't speak about that, shouldn't speak about that. We need to respect the process that will unfold. I guess the last part is looking forward, lessons learned. So the RCMP, just like all the other agencies, are going through a lesson learned exercise. In fact, Inspector Addie McCollum, who's to my right, he's a brand new commissioned officer that joined us in Lower Sackville. Addie, good evening. Thank you for joining the Halifax RCMP team. He's leading up our effort and will be working with all the different agencies. And it is important that we learn. We didn't do everything right. We certainly didn't. But I tell you, I'm amazingly proud of the effort put in by all categories of employees in the RCMP and the volunteers of GSAR, because we did very many things right. That doesn't mean we can't do better the next time. And again, like any major event, that holistic approach, how do we flow in and support the Emergency Operations Center? How do we support our employees? Did we look after our employees well enough during that operational tempo? You know, there's lots of different things we need to ask ourselves. And so if you have feedback on the RCMP response, you can certainly drop into the Town Talent Office. Inspector Addie McCollum will be working at Lower Sackville. There are different ways and means to be in touch with us, and we welcome that. We welcome that. So, yeah, I'm talking too long. I'm getting the shepherd's hook. So thank you very much. You have other people. Thank you so much for your support and cooperation during the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Superintendent Christie. Power's on, the power's off. You know, we never know when it's coming, but it's safe. And I'd like to ask Matt Drover, Senior Director of Energy Delivery, and Dave Landry, Regional Manager of Nova Scotia Power, to come up.
Evening, everyone. Again, I'm Dave Landry. I'm the Senior Operations Manager for Nova Scotia Power. So for context, what that means is I'm responsible for, among other things, all of the power line technicians that would service your communities here. With me tonight again is Matt Drover, Senior Director of Energy Delivery. Really first, I just wanted to start by saying our thoughts are with everybody that was affected, whether you had to evacuate, you lost a home or a business, or you experienced any damage to your property. During the wildfires, you know, we would have worked with local authorities and first responders as they addressed the forest fires, not only here but elsewhere in the province. We took the lead from those fire officials to cut power to the impacted areas, both for the safety of those first responders and for you as our customers. As HRM allowed residents back in, they would have also notified us. We would have been restoring power or aiming to restore power about 2 hours after those re-entry were permitted. Again, this was for the safety of everybody involved. Thinking of things like whether or not you would have left in a hurry with your appliances still on, as an example. Our teams worked with anybody that did experience electrical damage to their home, so we coordinated repairs with electrical contractors and our inspectors. We also had supporting teams from our customer care center and insurance providers to help process claims as quickly as possible. We continue to work closely with the impacted communities and support wherever we can. We've had a member from our customer care team here helping answer questions. and helping folks as they work through the processes to rebuild. We want to ensure that all residents have what they need to move forward. So really just want to leave you with, if anybody has any questions or just wants to reach out, feel free to reach out to our customer care center. The number is 1-800-428-6230. And I'll be around for the rest of the evening if there's any questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt and Dave. You know, we said that there was no loss of life. Well, that's not quite true. Is that there were animals that perished in this, but there was an extreme effort to save and preserve some of those cherished animals. And I'd like to ask Joanne Landsberg from SPCA to come up and talk to us.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Welcome, Jalasi. Pam, thank you for inviting us to be part of this evening. We think it's very important for us to connect with the community because we all know and understand how important our pets are, especially in times of this. So my name is Joanne Landsberg, and I'm the Chief Provincial Inspector with the Nova Scotia SPCA. It's kind of a long title, but what that means is we're in charge of the animal cruelty and neglect cases, the investigations that happen across Nova Scotia. And first of all, I would like to acknowledge all of those that have suffered losses during the wildfires. I witnessed firsthand a lot of the significant loss to the homes and the property, and I just can't imagine what this has done to the emotional well-being of so many of you here. And it's true, thankfully, we did not have any, no human loss of life, but as sadly as many of us know, there was loss of life, and that was many of our pets, our family members that we did lose. And we are so truly remorseful for that. Pets are family, and those losses, they're real and they're heartfelt. So we would just like to acknowledge that. So the SPCA, we became involved in the evacuation of pets on Sunday evening. I learned about it, like many of you did, on social media. And once we knew that something was happening, we knew that once people were being evacuated, there's going to be families with pets that are going to need some assistance. So we sprang into action. We gathered all our resources that we had, and we started out at the resource centers. We were at the superstore just asking if anybody needed assistance. They needed food, they needed shelter for their pets, and we were well received. I can remember going up Hammonds Plains Road at one point, and we were met by some fire personnel, and they said, "We're so glad to see you. Can you come with us? There's pets in this house, and we can get them, but we don't know what to do with them." So we went with them, and we managed to get animals out of that house. There was quite a significant number of animals in that house that night, in that one house, and the fire was literally right behind the house. So thankfully they recognized that, and they got a hold of us, and we were able to get them out. So, and from there, our officers worked with the frontline staff. We worked with fire, we worked with DNR and police, where they carefully escorted us into the hot zones where we knew pets were located, and got them out and brought them back to our shelters. And we are so grateful for that, to have those escorts. I can remember driving around at certain points when the fire, the water bombers were above our heads, and they were holding us back, saying, "Okay, now it's safe to go." So that's a good reason why. I know everybody said, "Well, why can't we go in? We'll just run in, we'll get our pets and come right out." But it's because we had to be in contact with radio. We had to be in contact with the fire to know exactly where they were dropping that water. So it was just really important that was very calculated, and we were able to get as many out as we could. So, as it stood then, at that point, the SPCA was not an essential service. I know there was some frustration with some people not knowing how to get in touch with us, or not knowing who to call, or what would happen with your pets if the SPCA removed them. So what we're doing now, and we weren't an essential service, we weren't part of EMO, so what we're doing now is we are working with government, we're going to work with EMO to formulate a formal emergency response so that when there is a crisis situation in a community, we can be notified right away and we can be on site and ready to go. You will know who to call, you will know what to do, it'll be very coordinated, and we can help you the best way we can. We've learned so much from this experience. We understand there was frustrations, but we're so pleased that we were able to get as many out as we did. And again, I am sorry for those that lost their pets. During that week, we continued to work behind the lines, tending to as many animals as we could. And for those pets that weren't able to be removed, we were feeding, we were leaving water out, we were leaving food out, we were feeding chickens. I didn't know Tantallon and Hammonds Plains had so many chickens. There was so many eggs. I could have had scrambled eggs every night and gave them to all the firefighters. But they're probably spoiled by the time you all got home, but it was really refreshing to see the chickens. It was fun, yeah. But it was one of the saddest experiences in my career that I've ever experienced, to see such devastation, to get addresses from folks, can you please go rescue my pet? And there was times we went there and we weren't going to be rescuing any pets. There was no home, there was no pets. And that was so devastating. I'm so truly sorry for that. It was hard for us, and I can't imagine how you folks felt. So we're going to learn from this. We're going to move on, like you all are. We're going to build an emergency response. We're going to be there for the community, as always. We have lots of programs and services available to help everyone. We were so pleased that so many people donated to the SPCA. To help us out, to supply foods, supply anything that we need. We got so many donations, and we were so happy for that. And it allowed us to house so many animals and keep them safe until their family members were able to pick them up. Some people met us right away on the other side of the evacuation lines. So we're actually happy to report that 136 animals were removed from the homes in the wildfires here in between Tantallon and Hammonds Plains, and all of those animals were reunited with their families. So, yeah. I really gained a new respect for the firefighters, the DNR, our friends with RCMP. They work so hard, and to see, being behind the lines with them all day, and the heat and the soot on their faces was true. They did work so hard, and we could see behind the lines where, they really did save structures. They saved animals' lives. They saved so much, and we are truly grateful as well. So we will continue to support your community and all the communities around. We will be open to feedback if there's something that we can do to help you better. Please let us know. We'll be here. One of our very own, Miss Taylor Hustis, she lives in your community, and she had some loss of life, some structure damage. And her husband is part of Halifax Fire, so he was here as well, fighting fires. So it was very close to home for us, as it was to you. So we just want to say thank you, and we look forward to serving you more in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne, and thanks for the levity. That was helpful. One of the areas that get devastated is, of course, our natural resources, our environment. And I'd like to ask Elizabeth Kennedy from the Department of Environment to come up and chat with us. Oh, there you are.
Chris is the king of the segues.
Oh, yeah.
Doing a good job. So my name is Elizabeth Kennedy, and I'm the Director of Water at Environment and Climate Change with the province. And I actually got to meet a number of you at the distribution centers where we were giving out test kits for the province's free testing program. As most people are aware now, wildfires can damage wells and impact drinking water that comes from a well. And early on, the Premier decided that he really wanted to make sure everyone had safe water when they were returning home. And so, it's not an easy process for anyone who has a well and does that regularly. And so we raised the issue of cost and just the convenience factor, and also considering how many people would be returning back home and wanting to test all at the same time, we also had to consider the capacity at the labs. And so this is why the province offered free well testing and the convenience of the community-based bottle pickup and sample drop-off for those affected by the fire. The program started on June 5th, and it'll run until July 31st. For those of you who have lost your home or for other reasons won't be able to test before July 31st, you can email drinkingwater@novascotia.ca to get instructions whenever you're able to get back to home and test. The testing results provide results for bacteria and chemistry. And so when your community was evacuated, the well in your water, the water in your well was stagnant for a period of time. It might have, your well might have depressurized. These are conditions that can allow chemicals to concentrate or for bacteria to form. We recommended disinfecting your well and testing your drinking water in these situations, and government supported people to do this because it can be expensive and inconvenient. You may need additional sampling for things like hydrocarbons if you do continue to have strange odors or smells, or if your chemical results are unusual compared to previous testing, or of course if you know of a specific contaminant release near you. So far, over 1,900 well owners have received their results. This is the biggest and fastest well testing program we know of certainly in Atlantic Canada, but so far in Canada, as far as we know. We have received some calls. Actually, before I talk about the next thing, I just want to thank the Halifax Fire volunteers who were there giving out test kits for many nights after, supporting people in evacuation centers, and they were tired, and they kept showing up and were amazing, and also Halifax staff who were there as well, helping the province get this program to the community. So we have received some calls about missing test reports, and the good news is that all of these have been found. Most of them have been in email junk mail boxes. So if you are still waiting for your well test and you haven't found it in your junk mail, then email drinkingwater@novascotia.ca, include the date that you submitted your sample. That would be very helpful. The email address that you provided on your form, and then your home address, and we will be able to find it. So far, there's only been 3 that we weren't able to find, and we also had 3 samples that didn't have a name attached to it. So I do believe that we have found there hasn't been a single sample that's been lost out of all those 1,900 and growing number of wells that were tested. So when we were doing this work, we did hear from many community members that this was the first time that they had ever tested their well. So for them, it felt very new, and it also felt like a bit of a headache when they already had so many things that they had to worry about, and that's a big frustration. Others were very happy for the convenience of the community-based bottle pickup and the free testing. We recommend that everyone test their well for chemistry every 2 years and for bacteria every 6 months. And you can go to novascotia.ca/well water testing to learn more about that, and also a tool to help you interpret your results when you receive them. So overall, this was the first time this was done, and there's definitely lessons learned for next time, but it was a great outcome that many people now understand their well water a lot better. We'll carry this forward in government's goal to address barriers for the testing and treatment of rural drinking water through the Environmental Goals and Climate Change Reduction Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Please join in me in a round of applause to our first responders and service providers that have talked to us. Before we move into the next segment of this, I'd invite you, if you're able and interested, to stand up and perhaps get some fluid going. And so, stand up. Say hello to your neighbor. Okay, folks. So I don't lose everybody over to the tables on the side. So now that we've heard from those folks who have provided exemplary service to us during the situation, let's hear now from the folks who were directly affected by that. And we have some representatives of the community organizations in our community to talk to us about their perspective of the fires and its impact. So I'm going to ask firstly from Westwood Hills, Dustin O'Leary.
Wow. I think it's okay, Chris. I think I'm all right. Okay. I was going to say, I feel like I've never been in a room that needs like a punching bag and a big hug both at the same time. So I'll do my steady best to try and represent both of those sides. I do want to start by saying thank you on behalf of the residents of Westwood Hills to the first responders who are here tonight, some of them for all they did on May 28th and after. Your dedication to doing everything possible to protect us and our homes is so appreciated. I want to also acknowledge my neighbors in Westwood Hills here tonight and watching, hopefully, online, as well as the folks in other neighborhoods, including Highland Park, Yankeetown, and Perry Pond, who either lost homes or suffered property damage. We're all in this together. While there's so many points to discuss tonight based on the format, there just isn't enough time, and I want to respect everybody else who's going to speak tonight as well. So we'll submit on behalf of the residents of Westwood Hills a list of questions to the representatives here tonight as well, and in the coming days. For the time I have, and as much as I would appreciate the opportunity to look back and see how we got to this point, I'm not sure that's a luxury we can afford. Residents of Westwood Hills are worried and they're scared, and they have every right to be. As damaging and impactful as the May 28th fire was, it did have a couple of characteristics that ended up containing what could have been an even worse situation. That's my opinion. The wind direction, the fact that the fire was on a weekend, and the fact that the fire was during the day with high visibility, all worked together to, while still causing horrific damage, prevent a human catastrophe in our neighborhoods. While we all hope that doesn't happen again, hope isn't a strategy. There's no assurance that the conditions for the next fire will be the same as was there for May and June. So looking forward to the next fire, because there will be a next one, I want to bring up a few points. The first one, and it's been discussed, is egress. Westwood residents, specifically at the middle and back of our subdivision, had what could only be termed as a terrifying experience trying to exit the subdivision during the fire. We've heard a bit about the options that are not possible, but not about what is possible. What options are being considered, and will folks that are here tonight be able to give some of the residents who have attended a level of comfort? We started a petition in Westwood Hills and have over 1,500 signatures that we want this egress to be given the priority it deserves and be done by the end of summer of this year. I do want to talk for a second about additional measures for fire mitigation, things like dry hydrants, firewalls. We want them created in our neighborhoods, and we should get some level of certainty on when those will be done, because they've been talked about for years but haven't been completed. One question that came up from the neighborhood that I feel is important, and I realize there's probably some disparity on where the responsibility lies, but I do want to take a minute to represent our littlest neighbors. Giant Steps Daycare had 3 locations in Westwood Hills. They now have 2 because one burned to the ground. And as I understand it, their plan basically for evacuation involves putting kids in the cars of their workers. And while admirable, again, our youngest residents are every bit as vulnerable as our oldest. So I want HRM and EMO and everybody here tonight to work not just with Giant Steps, but with everybody who is taking care of children in Westwood Hills and in other neighborhoods to work out a plan to get them out in a fast way when the next one happens. Because this one happened on a weekend, we were lucky. We may not be lucky again. So with that, I do want to take a final few seconds to say a word on communication. For the leaders tasked with communicating on this fire, I don't think anybody should be taking any congratulatory bows. Fractures between HRM and the province have been made very public, with folks seemingly more interested in avoiding accountability than helping people or finding solutions. And nobody should forget that those intergovernmental fractures had hundreds of impacted families in the middle of them. First responders raced to the fires. They took on an impossible task ahead of them without skirting their responsibility, and we need our leaders to do the same. We need you to embrace the responsibility and accountability for keeping our residents safe going forward, not point in every direction to avoid it sticking to you. Make friends here between the people who have control over this. Stop talking to the media and work behind the scenes. And work behind the scenes to make our neighborhood safer, and do it fast. Hope isn't a strategy, folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Destin. Now representing Highland Park, Marion Gillespie.
Hi, folks. No, I'm good. Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for allowing a representative from each affected subdivision to speak tonight. Appreciate that. Hello, my name is Marion Gillespie, and I am currently the co-chair of the Highland Park Ratepayers Association, along with Tricia Marie Dion. Before I begin, I would like to personally thank the fire department, the RCMP, DNR, and all first responders that worked diligently to fight the fires. Your dedication and tireless work has not gone unnoticed. Please accept my heartfelt thank you on behalf of the residents of Highland Park. Highland Park was the most affected subdivision in Hammonds Plains, with 70 homes destroyed and another 37 severely affected. That's a total of 107 homes and families that have lost everything. Again, let me repeat these numbers. 70 homes destroyed, 37 severely damaged, 107 homes and families affected, with only one entrance and exit in our subdivision. What was the total of the total of the houses that were destroyed? 151? Think about that. 107. As I relive my own personal memories of my husband and I being turned away from entering our subdivision at 6 p.m. on May 28th and being told to drive back towards Bedford, and then quickly becoming engulfed in flames as the fire quickly jumped Hammonds Plains Road, I am hearing a multitude of experiences Highland Park residents dealt with that are just as horrifying. The most impactful for me are those that were contacted by friends and told to leave because an emergency evacuation order never came out for Highland Park until 6:09, even though homes were on fire between 4:30 and 5 on Carmel Crescent. Friends and neighbors running outside, seeing black smoke, feeling burnt pine needles and ash falling on their faces, and darkness from heavy smoke covering our subdivision as the fire grew and ravaged our community quickly. Residents grabbed what they could to leave their homes, only to be stuck in traffic within our subdivision because there is only one way out of our subdivision. For years, Highland Park ratepayers communities have tried to work with HRM requesting a second exit. In 2006, the municipality became the owners of the majority of the land needed to create our second exit, but it wasn't until 2015 that HRM requested a report be written by their engineering department. The report was finally written and submitted in 2019, 13 years after they owned the majority of the land needed to effect this. The report stated that due to the cost of another exit, it would not make sense, and it was not recommended at that time. The cost was $700,000. So that report suggested that our safety wasn't worth $700,000. The report was presented by council, by our previous councillor, and thankfully received a vote to proceed with further planning with an expectation of the road being constructed in 24-25. Due to delays between HRM and the province, a small parcel of land that was never transferred to HRM until this year, despite being owned by the province since 1993, before the municipality had acquired the rest in 2006. The reason the transfer happened is because our Ratepayers Association never let the task go and ensured that both governments got together and got the transfer done. Now our exit will not see completion until 25-26, when in actual fact, it should be completed this year. The emergency exit that was built where our second exit will go is locked on both ends. What happens when another incident happens and residents need to get out? Will we have to wait for someone to show up with a key to open both gates? This is unacceptable. Our exit needs to be completed now. Our residents are hurt, upset, and struggling to get information on what is next. We as the Ratepayers Association are trying our best to support everyone, but it shouldn't fall on a small group of volunteers. HRM and the province need to step up and help. Don't send links to funding. Take the initiative and help support residents and even the ratepayer volunteers to figure out how to go about getting funds and how to ensure each resident is taken care of. Family needs financial supports in their hand right now from their governments. Our association and a concerned resident sat with the United Way to discuss their processes and communications. They were happy to be at the table with us and were saddened to hear the stories we had to share. Why are we, a small group, doing this? Because the government has let us down, and we knew that for us to understand the process, we needed to take action ourselves to get the answers that everyone needed. Communication during and after the event has been badly handled. Emergency responders and the public were unaware of what was happening. Evacuees were telling other residents to leave the subdivision because it was on fire as they drove by them. Residents had to post on Facebook to let others know to get out. Yes, it was total chaos, but isn't HRM prepared for these situations? Obviously not. When is the plan to address a situation like this in order to ensure it is handled better in the future? Evacuation orders were far too late. 911 operators were telling residents to return to their homes in Highland Park because the fire hadn't hit Highland Park yet. Those speaking with the 911 operators were telling them, my backyard's on fire, my shed is on fire, my house is on fire, I can't go back. 911 had no idea. As the days followed after the fire, information was once again handled poorly and communication was lacking, as well as confusing when it was sent out. We relied on our social media accounts to try to decipher new alerts. It was all ridiculous and extremely sad that we couldn't rely on HRM to provide us with the proper information. We have a number of questions from residents. I won't read through them, we will share them. But one did hit, and that is when DNR, or when will DNR be filing charges against the person or persons responsible for the fire? And if so, when can we expect to hear? Their careless actions caused the wildfires to ravage our areas. Remember, 107 homes in Highland Park were subject to the obvious negligence of one resident in Westwood. To end my time, I wish to remind you all, as councillors of our area, there is a responsibility that comes with the job. Shifting a problem to another area of government, placing blame elsewhere is not helpful. We need action. We need to be listened to, not argued with. We also need the full story. And we need to be kept informed and involved in all reviews, reports that will be written following the horrible event. To all residents within our Tantall and Hammonds Plains area, please know that a large number of our subdivisions have joined together to form the Tantallon Wildfire Life Safety Coalition. Myself and Tricia and a few other residents in Highland Park are proud to be part of that team, which will focus on working with all government agencies in regards to egress issues within all subdivisions, requesting dry hydrants, drilled wells that can be connected to a hydrant, as well as ensuring our air quality is healthy, and many other issues that may potentially affect us. This organization seeks to bring together all of the stakeholders in one room, which I believe will ensure our government representatives cannot simply pass the buck and ensure real results can be achieved. Thank you.
Pretty clear messaging. From Yankeetown, I'd ask Terry Kotwitz to come forward.
Thanks. So I'm Terry Kotwitz from Yankeetown Road, and I also have Forest Kids Early Learning. I can see that Highland Park pretty well got everything wrapped up in a nicely tied bow, even though our name isn't on your piece of paper there. Kind of excluded Yankeetown Road, so I don't really know how that works. Maybe you can add us. I wouldn't mind joining. So everybody's talking about when the fire started, but what about how we were informed that our homes were gone, right? We contacted 311, gave our name, everything like we were supposed to do, and we didn't know till the week after, like I think it was that Tuesday, legally, that our home was gone, even though we heard from people on Facebook. We heard about our center. It's not burnt, it is burnt, it's not burnt, and then a nice young fellow who used to go to daycare when he was young did message me and say that he knew it was gone because he's seen it being burnt. We were told our home wasn't gone, it was gone, and thank you to the SPCA for feeding our chickens. It was absolutely awesome. So we really appreciate that. We also appreciate the firefighters, you know, and the emergency crews over there. They all did an awesome job, but we're not happy with how we were told. We're not happy with how the building permits are coming through. As some people here tonight know, we're trying to get our center up and running. We're renovating a building. I asked for a permit about 4 weeks ago now. They said, yep, I'll email it to you. Haven't heard anything since. We're still going on. We're putting trailers in the yard. We don't know when anybody's going to come and give us an occupancy permit, but we're still going straight forward. Another thing is fences. Who's paying for the fences? Somebody says we don't have to pay for the fences. Somebody else says your insurance company's going to pay for the fences. If you don't have insurance, who's going to pay for the fences? Right? They're still there. When are they leaving? Are you allowed to take them down? So we did take them down. We piled them up. Daycare is not insured. We're not keep that a secret. It was can't even talk about it because we don't know what happened. Are we going to end up paying for that fence for 3 months? Who knows? Because nobody knows. I've asked both government people here today, and you still can't give an answer. So the building permits need to come out. Why isn't there another water bomber? If all the water bombers are down in Barrington Passage, and we have a fire here, so the government got to step up and give us one here, give us one in Cape Breton. What if some fire is in Cape Breton? We got the water bomber, Barrington's got it. Right? So I think the government needs to step up and give us some water when there's fires. I don't know anything about dry hot to get some water there, and we're able to get out. We have 2 ways out, so we're lucky. But I think the Hammonds Plains Road needs to be widened. If we ever have another episode, we're not going to get out. Right? That traffic was wicked. So if you add more people to it, we're having an apartment building built on our street, so that's going to add seniors 55 and plus in 8 units. That's probably 8 or 16 more cars. You guys are going to have a second entrance out. How are they going to get out? You're going to be right across from Rockcliffe. Are they going to put a light in? What happens when you're both trying to turn one way? Who's going to, we went through Walk. There was nobody there, right? Traffic is stopping at a red light when there's a fire, right? So really, we definitely have to get something done in that aspect of how we're going to get out. So building permits, how we're going to get out. Cutting trees, that was one thing people had asked me to say. Are you going to cut the trees down along Hammonds Plains Road before they fall down? 32 or 33 meters from the center line. That's another question for you guys, right? Anyway, I know we are way over our time, and I could speak for a way lot longer. Oh, I could speak for the kids, because if that fire was in the daytime, I can tell you we would have 82 parish children plus 20 parish staff, because we would have never got out of there. With the traffic on that highway, we would have never got those kids out. Even in our cars, not even happening. So I don't know if there can be, something put in place like giant steps that, evacuation for people have 82 or 100 kids they're looking after, how we can get them out in a fast fashion. I mean, we can get them out of the building, but we can't get them out of the road. And the way that fire came, so that might be a good idea why there's enough water bombers, why there's enough helicopters that they can put water down. Like our home is gone and our center's gone. We're lucky we have a home to live in, so, it's a lot better. And another thing, one of our families was told that their house was gone. They have 3 children, their house is gone. When all in all, their house was still there. So 311 had to call everybody to let people know, yes, your house is gone, because I think almost all houses were gone the night of the fire. The woods were on fire, and a lot of them were our woods, right? So we lost, I don't know, probably 15 acres of woods. But they could have called 150 people, 150 families to say your house is gone, because they know what address they were at. So I hope if we have ever have another fire, people will be able to find out if their house is there or not. Because this family almost fainted when we were at the park in Bedford, and somebody said, oh, yeah, we got in and we drove by, your house is still there, right? I mean, that's just devastating for a family. So I think something has to be brought up in there. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Can I ask Denny Privo from Perry Pond to come forward?
I'm good. I can yell at that, no problem. Anyway, thanks, Councillor Pam, for facilitating this, organizing this. I do appreciate it. It's good. It's good to get together and have this opportunity to talk. It's really the first opportunity we've had to have everybody together, not just the folks who lost their homes. I also want to thank all the volunteers, staff, and officials who, and from the many organizations, and continue to do so today, who are, worked very hard and diligently towards, helping the residents on that fateful afternoon, and continue in many ways to assist with recovery efforts that go forward. My name's Denny Prevost. I'm a retired fire chief. I spent 39 years in the emergency services on the pointy end of the stick, and now I'm doing consulting work. Have been doing emergency management consulting work for the last 7 years. So this is really the first time I've been kind of on the opposite side of the table, if you will, because normally I was the guy in the uniform. So, and I represent Perry Pond. So a little bit about Perry Pond. Perry Pond is kind of the subdivision nobody knows exists. Certainly the people giving the emergency notices don't know. So we're only 35 homes and a small natural park. There's not much facilities there. And we're a very close-knit community. We have a Facebook group. We talk on the street all the time. It's like an old-time community, so we really appreciate that. It's full of kids, I thought it was retirement when I moved there. I got that wrong. But after this fire, Perry Pond is really a war zone. And you wouldn't recognize the place. We all the time talking now about this is not the place we moved into. You just wouldn't recognize it. And to continue on with that analogy of a war zone, we have quite a number of military families that live in our neighborhood, as well as in the area. It's a Halifax thing. So we can't compete in sheer numbers with some of the other speakers you've already talked to. But we suffered a 97% casualty rate. So of those 35 homes, only one home did not suffer any damage to its building or the outbuildings. 34 others did. 100% of our homes suffered destruction of trees. Landscaping, including on most properties, 100% kills of the conifers, those are those nice evergreens, and very high percentages of deciduous tree kills too. The reports that are coming back from the arborists are that basically it's a complete bulldoze replant job, which we are in the process of doing right now. And Matt and his group are doing that, and we appreciate that, Matt. Thank you very much. Perry Pond. Perry Pond had, again, military, had a 30% mortality rate. 10 homes were completely destroyed by fire in a circle around my place, pretty much. And when this fire was going on, my doorbell camera was running live. And that's the first that a lot of our residents knew that their houses were burning down at the moment. They could watch it on the camera. Pretty tough, pretty tough. 10 homes were completely destroyed by fires. They burned into the foundations. That's 10 families, our dear friends, our dear neighbors, most of whom who had nothing with them except the clothes on their backs. And their kids, and leaving in a blind panic. Neighbors telling neighbors, and like my wife, she left in a panic. I was an hour away, unfortunately, and she'll never let me forget that, but that's another story. I'm never around when I'm needed. I think that was the terminology. What else is new? But at least she said I was needed. That was important. Anyway, having said all of that, and yes, there was a lot of wonderful things done that night. I think the police officer who came to my door at 7:30, an hour and a half after we were gone. We appreciate that, and that kind of stuff. But these are the concerns of the residents. Perry Pond residents feel that they need a seat at the table. They need to be able to communicate with the officials in the post-review analysis of what went on here, as well as what happened before the event or what didn't happen, during the event, and what's happening after the event. It's all well and good as an organization to do an analysis of how you did, but if you don't do a 360-degree analysis, looking at it from all aspects, including the stakeholders, you have not got the full picture. You're only looking at from one side. And that tends to be what happens. I'm just saying it now, been there. This analysis is really only the first step of what is needed to go forward from this, and it's definitely expected by us as residents. It will be completely incomplete. It will be one-sided. It'll end up on somebody's shelf in somebody's office if it does not include the stakeholders from that day. And the stakeholders are the responders, but they are also the residents, and they're largely the taxpayers in this province who are going to be footing the bill, whether you know it or not. $10 homes at $500,000 each, anyone with oil heat would be another majority of hundreds of thousands of dollars. The trees that are lost, we're all at $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 to replace our trees. Add all that up and we're like $7 million, $8 million Perry Pond alone. And like I said, we're small. Anyway, Perry Pond residents are principal stakeholders and expect to be part of any inquiry process that comes out of this, and there should be one. We expect a commitment from government to move this inquiry process forward, and I mean all levels. Municipalities are creatures of the province, so really the province is in charge on this. The inquiry process needs to move forward, and then there needs to be honest follow-through with implementation of recommendations in a timely manner. We're not looking for some report on a shelf. This is not the first fire that's happened in HRM. There's been a number of them in the wildland-urban interface, that's what it's called. There's been more than one. I can name them for you, but the officials know very well what they are, and there were lessons supposedly learned from those. We need to move forward and add the new lessons to that, and let's get going. One of the other things in specifics, I won't get too far down into the weeds here, but access egress from our communities is a concern, especially during an emergency where an evacuation is required. The recent direct experience of our residents brought by this event demonstrates that very clearly. We do not see the issues of access and egress improving as further development puts additional pressure on the existing infrastructure. We just found out there's a 72-unit building going up next door to our property, for instance. 72 units. What's that, 72 cars? We believe that both the city and the province needs to focus on effective planning and installing adequate infrastructure as a priority, with future development second, contingent. Know what you're planning, put the infrastructure in, and then allow the development to go forward. We're doing it ass backwards. Access right now is an issue. You try and get up Hammonds Plains Road 2 or 3 times of the day when it's chugged. You try and get down it when it's garbage day. Good luck to you. Communications during and post-incident has been a problem, is a problem, and continues to be a problem. Pam has done a lot to talk about the little programs that are available, but in general terms, the communications when it really matters, when the incident's happening in those first few hours, they were dismal. Anyway, communications needs to be timely, needs to be effective. There needs to be a frequency to it that you can expect. It needs to be accurate, and it needs to be coordinated. There were so many mixed messages, different levels, different organizations. We can't let you back because the water needs to be tested. We need to do soil testing. That's not provincial. That is provincial. It's not municipal issues. So, those are out of sync with each other. Just little examples. A large improvement is needed in that. There needs to be a proper communication plan, needs to be followed. Halifax Alert, the Everbridge system, was never used. It was a great way to communicate. Like, there wasn't enough people signed up. They're flocking to sign up now because you don't use it. Inadequate emergency management outcomes were really an outcome of this incident, I think. There was, seriously, there was a lot of positive things done by a lot of people, maximum effort put in. Really, I don't want to, to cut that down at all. A lot of good things were done by good people. People worked their heart out on this. I understand that. But there were major critical things missing. So effective emergency management includes appropriate actions, policies, procedures, and resourcing. There has to be a follow-through. There's integrated functional areas of effective emergency management. Those include things like mitigation prevention, the things you do to keep these incidents from happening. And when they happen, which they do, to prevent them from having a devastating impact that this did have. Then you need to have preparedness. There needs to be plans, but plan is not a book on a shelf. A plan is a living document that you use and you exercise and you know by heart. You shouldn't have to tell a police officer on his own initiative to double track the traffic down Hammonds Plains Road to make it work. You shouldn't have to do that. That should be part of the evacuation plan. I'm just giving examples so you understand where the hell I'm talking about. Then response. That's simple things like having the right vehicles, the right equipment, the right training, everything to respond correctly, the ability to talk from the ground to the air, all that kind of stuff needs to be there, needs to be practiced, needs to be effective. And then recovery, which is basically the process we're in right now. And for some of our residents, the recovery is a long, long road. We're talking a year and a half. Permits is one thing. Insurance, battling with the insurance, another issue. Trauma. I mean, my wife got out, but she's traumatized by this. Everybody is, to one level or another. I'm traumatized because I wasn't there when I should have been. Anyway, there currently appears to be some significant gaps in those 4 things I was just talking about. And we need to meet this framework for effective emergency management. And this is the federal framework that the province follows and municipalities should be following also. We need to do better. We really need to do better for the next time. And there will be a next time. Look at the map. There's a lot of green there. And as some of my residents have told me, they're not my residents, but some of my neighbors, have told me, it's not just about wildland fires. There's other things, that can happen in the community that can cause a need to trigger an emergency response. that requires an evacuation, that requires coordination of multiple levels, where you've got DNR responsible for the forest, HRM Fire responsible for the structures and the houses, and the police responsible for public safety and traffic and so forth. All these organizations need to work together specifically to various incidents as they happen. So all of these things, need to be there. They're going to happen. Wildland fire is the most likely thing to happen next time around, but it has to be coordinated. We need to be better prepared. That's all I got to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Denny. It's 8 o'clock. I'm sure everybody will agree with me. We want to hear from the rest of our speakers, right? So given that, is that Andy Boyles from Haliburton. Andy.
I think that's good. Can you hear me okay? Good evening. My name is Andrew Boyles. I'm a retired professional engineer, an executive with Telecom, and a resident of Haliburton Hills for over 20 years. I'm here to represent the concerns of the residents of Haliburton Hills as a result of the wildfire that impacted our community and so many others. One of the concerns have been traffic management, with many wondering why we don't have the ability to get in and out of Haliburton Hills via Exit 4 in addition to Exit 5. In the past, it seems like there was a plan for Exit 4, but it never materialized. It created a bottleneck and extra driving for many. However, it has also raised the issue that if we had an emergency, how would everybody escape in a safe and timely manner? The wildfire has brought this issue into sharp focus. Traffic management is not a mere inconvenience as it was perceived in the past. It's actually a matter of life and death. I'm here to convey the message for the residents of my community that we want our elected representatives to hear us when we say that we need progress made on egress for Haliburton Hills. Physically diverse egress in a time of a natural disaster is the #1 priority on everyone's mind and dominates online discussion in the aftermath of the wildfire. I have been in touch with both Pam Lovelace and Ben Jussum, and I thank you both for your taking the time to talk to me several times about the egress issue and what needs to be done to make progress. I am truly grateful that you have listened and received our message. In our opinion, success in the initiative to improve community safety looks like all levels of government cooperating with each other, landowners, and the residents to plan, design, budget, and implement diverse egress in our communities in a timely manner and with a sense of urgency. Making it easy for residents to track the progress of the planned initiatives and to have the opportunity to ask questions and provide comments is very important. We realize there are other priorities, both operational and capital-oriented, but egress is our focus right now. We don't expect gold-plated solutions. We just want solutions that work and enable us to be safe. We would also like policies to be created so this issue won't be a problem for communities that are established in the future. Thank you very much for allowing me to take the time to make this statement on behalf of Haliburton Hills.
Thank you, Andy. Gina Jones, Upper Hammonds Plains.
Oh, I'm so short. Yeah. Challenge. Or vertically. Good evening, everybody. My name is Gina Jones Wilson, and I'm representing the community of Upper Hammonds Plains. I'm the current president of the Upper Hammonds Plains Community Development Association, and we would like to say thanks to the firefighters, the first responder. This hit close to home. I'm a retired firefighter after 15 years from Station 5051. And so I know the challenges of fighting a forest fire. I was involved in the forest fire down in the subdivision a few years ago. Kingswood, and it's not an easy thing. It's a hard job, hot. But during this evacuation, our community wasn't impacted with homes or loss of property, but it was a scary situation. I was sitting there watching the glows, and I'm saying to my brother, we were sitting in the yard, the glows are getting bigger, and that means every time that sky lit up, that's a home going up, and it's just something you learn as being a firefighter. So, you know, a lot of the residents, oh, that's far away. No, it's not actually that far away. So I was kind of worried that people were getting too laid back, and then the evacuation order came, and that was one of the issues the community had. When the evacuation order came, they said Pockwalk Road. Unfortunately, the community's Upper Hammonds Plains, not every resident lives on the Pockwalk Road. So we had residents that didn't live on the Pockwalk Road that didn't move. So myself and one of the other residents were actually running around the other streets saying, you guys, this is for the whole community. And they said, oh no, they said Pockwalk Road. I live on Anderson Road, or I live on Lifestyle Lanes. No, it's Pockwalk Road. It came, we found out through EMO that the provincial mapping has our area listed as Pockwalk Road. So my request through our residents is for the province to have that fixed. Upper Hammonds Plains was established in 1815. That's 200 years ago. So I think we deserve to be called by our proper name. The second issue is with the egress, and I know everybody's been on that, and we all know there's a whole problem in District 13 with egress. We've been asking for it since the early 1980s, and that was after the Pockwalk watershed became part of our community. And as the gentleman said before, there's just not fires. With the water plant comes chemical spills. We asked them for an evacuation plan because if there's a chemical spill after what is now called White Hills Run, the community members are stuck. There is no other way out of Upper Hammonds Plains. And some of the members, a lady just talked to me today, they said her and her husband just went up to the Pockwalk water plant, pushed the button, and told the guy, if you don't come and unlock the fence, we're just gonna cut it off. Because there is a exit that, what is the power line is what they use to get out. So, you know, people panic. We need that exit. Our area is growing, like our community was between 400 and 500. Just this winter, when we went to HRM to get our zoning change, they also told us that they already approved almost 800 units. So if you add 3 people to each unit, we're looking at another 2,100 people with no way to get out in an emergency. So I think that it's a huge issue. I think it's an issue of neglect. It's not something that happened overnight. It's with a clear conscience. I can't blame this on this whole mess on any one individual. It's a failure of multiple governments, provincial and municipal. All 3 of our political parties who have been in power over the years of this neglect, there needs to be some accountability. And from working in government for 32 years, that starts at the top. So my message from our community is addressed to Premier Houston, Mayor Savage, Councillor Lovelace, MLA Ben Jessom, and council members. The residents of Upper Hammonds Plains and District 13 deserve better, as we tax-paying residents and the people that voted you into office to serve the best interests of ours, the best of our interests. It's time to stop playing the game of pass the buck or hot potato, where you call one government, HRM, no, that belongs to the province, or you call the province as HRM. I think we just need more cooperation, even if they want to call it a coalition between our governments. And as one is under the other, I don't think it's be a hard ask. Important decisions need to be made over the next months, weeks, and I know some people say we shouldn't dwell on the past, but there's an African proverb, and it's called Sankofa, and the meaning is teaching us the importance of learning from our past to build the future. We don't want to repeat our mistakes. I'm not saying we need to dwell on what's happened before, but we need to look back and see what those plans were and why they didn't work for us. The wildfires in May, and I actually was on my way to a conference the day after, so I wasn't actually here for most of the wildfire, but I was in New York on a conference, and my phone bill, don't even talk. I was there in New York, and everybody was saying to me, you don't look like you're really interested. It's not that I'm not interested. I said, I'm here physically, but my heart is in Nova Scotia, and my phone bill proved it. And it was all of those over long-distance phone calls, but in May, the fire proved the lack of egress routes in this area is dangerous, and only by luck, the grace of God, or whatever you want to choose to call it, we lost no human lives. We may not be so lucky next time. I do believe I can say that everyone in this room knows that there's a housing crisis and that more housing units need to be built. But we need the infrastructure along with these housings. This area is just getting more homes, but no infrastructure to go with it. And I mean, that's happened for years. I'll be 62 next week, and I can't believe the amount of how much this area has grown, but I look around, we still have the portables at our elementary school, like 40 years. Our kids deserve better than that. But, and I'll end with this, I know we need to build more housing units, but not without proper infrastructure and not at the expense of turning our existing communities in District 13 into tombstones.
Thank you, Gina. Happy birthday, by the way. Can I ask Jordan Post from Glen Arbor to come forward?
Hi, I'm Jordan Post. I'm the president of the Glen Arbor Homeowners Association. And first off, I just wanted to express the thank you on behalf of all of our residents, for all the people on the board and the organizations, as well as those not represented on the board, for their hard work in response to the wildfire, but also in all the recovery efforts after. I know a lot of people worked very hard, and our residents very much appreciate it. I'll be quick. I have 4 things I want to talk about. One is hopefully just a clarification. On the topic of water quality, we were hoping to get an answer on whether DNR or any other organization in response to the wildfire brought in any Class B FFF foam to fight any of the structure fires. The concern there would be the PFAS that's contained in that foam and whether that soil's been cleaned up if it was used in any structure fires before it migrates to any water tables. And then I've got 3 improvement opportunities that I wanted to summarize from our latest annual general meeting, where residents expressed a few things. There's one short-term, one medium-term, and one long-term that we think would make a big difference to address some of the concerns that people have talked here today. The first one is around a quick win, which we think is the dry hydrants. We think that's a relatively easy one to execute. It would benefit a lot of communities, and a lot of people are asking for it, so we think that's a good quick win. On the medium term, and this is really more specific to White Hills, Maplewood, Glen Arbor area, is there are some obvious connection points which address egress routes as well as routing traffic off of Hammonds Plains Road and connecting White Hills Run through to Natura Drive at Lucasville, as well as connecting White Hills to Indigo Shores. That addresses multiple needs, and we think that's really important. And lastly, and probably the elephant in the room that we all don't know the perfect solution to, but Hammonds Plains Road. So additional egress routes to Hammonds Plains Road may not solve the problem, it just may create additional backups. As anyone would have experienced trying to get down Puckwalk from Maplewood, White Hills, Glen Arbor, there was backups all into the community because of Hammonds Plains Road. It is the critical artery, it only has so much capacity. Additional egress points that dump more traffic onto that road don't solve anything, they just distribute the backups into the communities in different places. There's a fundamental problem with Hammonds Plains Road. If you get out your phone and you Google anywhere on the South Shore to anywhere northeast of Bedford, it routes you through Hammonds Plains Road. It is a highway bypass. And even if there's traffic, and it's faster, that's why it does that. But even if there's traffic on Hammonds Plains Road, it's not faster anymore. Just so you know. The second part. The second part of my point is that Google, even if it's slower, even in times of backup, and I've been testing this the last 2 weeks, it will still route you through Hammonds Plains Road on your phone because it's 15 kilometers shorter than driving the 103 to the 102, because it's more fuel efficient. And Google and a lot of other navigation systems take into factor fuel efficiency and transportation time. And a lot of people just go by their phones. So that is a fundamental problem. It is a highway bypass as much as it is a community road. Twinning the road will help. It may not solve the problem. And there's a very interesting parallel on the other side of the harbor. It's not exactly the same, but it's an interesting parallel. Magazine Hill. It saves people 16 kilometers than going the 102 to the 118 at Fall River. And it's been a problem forever. And they've recognized it's a problem. And they're finally fixing it by building the 107 highway connector from Sackville to Dartmouth. Hammonds Plains Road is analogous to Magazine Hill. The only real solution to that problem is to come back to something that was considered and approved by Nova Scotia Environment 13 years ago, which is the 113 connector from Timberley to Larry Utek. That would significantly divert traffic off of Hammonds Plains Road. That will be built eventually. We need to start thinking about it now. That's all I have to say, so I want to thank everyone for their time.
Thank you, Jordan. Uplands, I have George Hudson.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm George Hudson. I'm the head of the Neighborhood Association of Uplands Park.
The person driving the yellow garbage pickup truck, parked gravel, please move it. Thank you.
It's not me. Having lived with a firefighter, my father was a firefighter for all his career. I want to first acknowledge the work they did. I'm also a supporter, and our community is a supporter of Tantown Wildlife Life Safety Coalition, and we want to acknowledge the great work that the volunteers have done. It's appropriate that I'm one of the last to speak because Uplands Park was the first community built in Hammonds Plains, or the first subdivision in Hammonds Plains. Rick, in one of our earlier meetings, Rick Burns talked about survivor's remorse. So on behalf of those communities that didn't have the same devastating losses, we will acknowledge your loss and we feel for you. What we did as an association is ask our community what concerns we have. And They've already been all highlighted here, but I just want to echo them. First and foremost, we've heard the year 1815. I ask you, how much different is Hammonds Plains Road now versus 1815? It's been paved. But we are not only the first community in Hammonds Plains, we are the first community with single exit. The difference between Uplands Park's single exit and those we've heard about here is all of you came by our exit during the evacuation, and we couldn't get out. But I ask you one question. When you come to Uplands Park for what we call the Greater Hammonds Plains Playground, when you leave Uplands Park, please do not try to turn left. We call you amateurs. The only way out of Uplands Park with that one exit is to turn right, go down the road, and do a U-turn at the lights. That's how bad the Uplands Park exit is. Now, my wife and I have lived there for 50 years. The difference now and then is the volume on Hammonds Plains Road. When I first moved there, when it came to exiting Uplands Park, we might casually take a look up the road, see if anybody's coming. Most of the time, nobody was. Tonight, when we drove here, the volume on Hammonds Plains Road going our way was bumper to bumper, unbelievable. So when we talk about out of control wildfires, my concern that I lay before you as a member of Uplands Park who's just had its community an approval for development of increasing it by 50%. And the so-called traffic expert said the same thing they've said on every other approval: negligible impact on traffic. And that is accepted by the planning division staff of HRM, who clearly don't live here. And that needs to be fixed. So one of the things in our planning meeting at the Tin Talon Coalition was the words accountable action. And I would call upon the province, because you need to know that I spent over 30 years in a senior position with community services for the province and the housing division. And what I had the privilege of seeing was both how municipal governments work and provincial governments work. And when you want accountable action, which is what we've heard tonight, I suggest you go to the Premier. And the first thing you ask is for a moratorium on any more development in Hammonds Plains. Just stop it cold until it fixes the underlying problems. One of those is this question of accountable action. We heard about staff reports taking years. I can tell you, working for a certain minister in community services, when he asked for a staff report, it was tomorrow. It was next week. There was no years you were given to do something. You better get it done now. Okay? So that's why I say go to the province because there's clearly an accountability gap between we as electors, the councillors, and the staff of HRM. There's a large gap. So I would suggest you ask the province to fix that. Because when the province wants something, for example, like thousands of units down past us, then they set HRM aside. So they have the power. And the one word we haven't heard from anybody when it comes to second exits is the word expropriation. So if you find the right place to make an exit, government can take the land and make it. There doesn't need to be a long study. So the other thing we talked about in our coalition was around transparency. What we haven't heard tonight is about the other fire. We had a fire on both sides of us, the big one, but there was one at Farmers. So we were stuck right between the two of them. And there's a little matter of a 30,000 liter tank of ammonia. And my question on transparency is how many risks are we living with that we don't know anything about, like that tank of ammonia just down the road from us? So I would ask governments at all levels to become much more transparent as part of coming up with accountable action plans to reduce our collective risk. So the concerns that our association had was the question of exits, and in our own case, we've been trying for years to get ours fixed, and that hasn't happened. And there's no accountable way for it to happen. The volume question, Hammonds Plains Road, volume needs to be fixed. And we've heard some options. But in all of these things, all you've heard is talk. We need to translate that into action, and accountable action, and people need to be held accountable to actually do something. We were the host community when Kingswood wildfire took place. And from the rumors we hear about the start of this latest fire, they are eerily similar to how that fire started in Kingswood West. And those people were evacuated and were hosted by us. My question is, from an accountable action point of view, what happened since that fire to the Westwood Hills fire, which seems to have started the same way? And what's going to happen to prevent the next one? We can't do anything about the past, but we can certainly change things for the future. So with that, I would leave you with the best of wishes from Uplands Park.
Thank you, George. As a facilitator, you're not supposed to have an opinion on anything, but I think it's clear from the presentations that we just had that there's a great deal of consensus on the issues and opportunities, a great deal of solidarity on moving forward, and a great deal of enthusiasm and motivation to move forward. And I think the message that you transmitted today is pretty clear. So I want to thank you for that. I want to call the meeting to close. I want to ask you to make sure that those points of view are made known if you haven't already. I want to encourage you to seek additional meetings. This is only the first, perhaps of many, additional meetings at your family level, at your community level, at your street level, and get the answers specific to your own opportunity. The tables in the back are still there. Visit those. Thank you very much for your enthusiastic attention. Have a good night.